You have seen the videos. A muscular dog with a thick neck stares through a fence, and the caption reads what would happen if he went wild. You have scrolled past them 100 times. Maybe you paused on that frame and asked yourself a question that feels almost too simple to say out loud. Could that dog survive? Not on a farm, not in a backyard, but in a forest where no one gets the mail and nobody fills the water bowl. Could he survive if the door simply opened and stayed open? Could any of them? Because the truth is stranger than the video you're about to watch. The truth is that the dogs built to survive out there would almost certainly lose. And the dogs that look the most dangerous to us might be the first to disappear. You see 3 breeds in your mind. The pit bull, dense and low to the round, bred for explosive power in a contained space. The Kangal, tall and rangy, bred to guard livestock across open plateaus with a bite strength your hand would shatter against. The German Shepherd, bred to think in patterns, to read human intention, to solve problems inside a system. 3 totally different survival toolkits. 3 completely different futures if the wild door opens. But here's the first reframe. You do not need to guess. You can know researchers at the University of Sydney compiled 30 years of data on free-living dogs, strays, and truly feral populations across every continent. They found a pattern that repeats so consistently, it reads almost like a law of nature. Domestic dogs that enter the wild do not form bands of organic killing machines. By the 2nd or 3rd generation, they revert. They revert to a creature that looks more like the wild dogs your ancestors knew than any modern breed you have paid for. Medium build, narrow skull, mottled coat, and behaviorally, they revert to something you would barely recognize as a dog anymore. So what does that mean for the 3 you're imagining? Your pit bull carries the genetics of a bulldog. Bred for a blood sport, your ancestors quietly ended more than a century ago. But those years of selection created a body optimized for a very specific task: fighting in a closed arena with rules. Explosive burst, tight radius, the ability to ignore pain long enough to finish the job. In the wild, pain is not a test of will, it is a signal, and the ability to ignore it is not courage. It is a death sentence. A wolf that broke its foot on a hunt would limp home or starve. A pit bull that ignored that signal for too long would not get antibiotics, would not get a splint, would not get rest. It would get sepsis. That is the lens you need to put on every breed, not what is impressive on a spreadsheet. What is invisible in the environment? Your Kangal could kill a wolf. That is not up for debate. One-on-one, the bite force and defensive instinct are real. But the environment does not line up opponents for fair fights. The Kangal is a livestock guardian. That means it was bred to patrol boundaries, to stand between a threat and a fixed point on the landscape. It was not bred to hunt. It was not bred to track invisible scent trails over days. It was bred to wait and then to react with overwhelming force in a very specific context. The wild is not a pasture. There is no flock to anchor the territory. The resources are not handed out by a human. They are scattered, unpredictable, and defended by species that have been winning this game for millions of years. Your German Shepherd might surprise you. Not because it is the most dangerous. Because it thinks it is. The German Shepherd was originally a herding dog before it became a police dog, and herding is a form of manipulation. It is the ability to predict where another mind will move and to move it before it knows it is being moved. In a world of fences and commands, this is genius. In the forest where no one obeys, this is just a fast brain with nowhere to apply itself. The German Shepherd will look for patterns. It will wait for the human signal that does not come. It will patrol the perimeter of a den site it has claimed for no particular reason, because the pattern feels safe, and feeling safe is the exact opposite of feeling hungry. You are starting to see the pattern now, are you not? All 3 breeds have been selected by human need, not by ecological demand. They are masterpieces of artificial selection because they do something for us. The wild does not negotiate with that design. It simply applies the filter, and the filter is brutal and silent, and it does not care what you bred. Now, here's the second reframe, the one that changes the question completely. You're not really asking about dogs. You're asking about a fear you carry without a name. The fear that something we built could shrug off its purpose and become wild again. But the science says the opposite. The Moscow stray study, conducted across decades by researchers at the Severtsov Institute, found something almost no one expected. Stray dogs in Moscow did not get wilder. They got better at humans. They learned to cross at traffic lights. They learned which restaurants had soft owners. They learned the subway schedule, riding specific lines at specific times, because that is where a human will sit down and share a sandwich. They did not become wolves. They became better citizens. And the ones that did go fully feral, that vanished into the forests and survived. Within a few generations, they stopped looking like dogs at all. They de-domesticated. Size shrank. Color modeled. Behavior shifted from flexible to rigid. They became something not quite wolf and not quite dog. A ghost of both. The dog part of them did not survive by getting stronger. It survived by erasing itself. That is what happens when you let a pack of hybrid dogs into the wild. The dog you recognize vanishes. The traits you paid for are liabilities. The instinct you fear was never really there. You were not watching a predator escape. You were watching a design that only works inside a society. And this is where the story bends back toward you. You are domesticated too. You have a roof, a language, a calendar, a persona that you manage like a garden. And if someone erased all of it tomorrow, if the door of your apartment opened and stayed open, you would not automatically become the wild human your ancestors were. You would panic. You would look for signs. You would wait for a signal that does not come. Just like the German Shepherd waiting for a command in an empty meadow. Your ancestors built these breeds. And in a way, the breeds now reveal what we have done to ourselves. When you see a pit bull on a leash, you're not seeing a weapon that chose not to fire. You are seeing a piece of history that someone sculpted for a specific room. When you see a Kangal standing motionless in tall grass, you are not seeing the ghost of a wolf. You are seeing a boundary that someone asked it to hold. When you see a German Shepherd staring at a closed door, waiting for the right sound, you are not seeing intelligence. You are seeing intelligence that has been given a single channel to run in, like a river that has been straightened. The wild does not want them. It does not need them. It has its own winners, and they have been winning without our help for longer than we have been human. So what actually happens if you release those 3 dogs into the wild? The Kangal might last the longest at first, because size is sometimes survival, and the instinct to hold territory can resemble the instinct to survive. But the calories needed to maintain that frame in a cold winter would exact a price no vet can see. The joints, the heart, the metabolic cost of being that big when the food is that scarce. The pit bull might find a niche in warm climates or in areas with dense small game, but the same genetic architecture that makes it formidable in a ring would punish it in a marathon. In the wild, the fight is not the finish line. The fight is the warm-up for a lifetime of running, hiding and waiting. The German Shepherd might be the most adaptable at first, but adaptability in a domestic context is a trap in a context of scarcity. It would overthink. It would look for a human system in a system that has none. It would waste energy reading signals that were not sent. And then if any of them did survive, if any of them found each other and bred, their offspring would not be better pit bulls, better Kangals, or better shepherds. They would be smaller, more cautious, more generic. The breed line would not be passed on. It would be dissolved by the chemistry of the wild itself. This is not a story about dogs. This is a story about what happens when something designed for one world is dropped into another. And here's the final reframe. You were never really worried about the dogs. You were worried about the boundary. You were worried about how thin the line is between civilization and the absence of it. You feel safer in a city not because there are no pit bulls, but because there are rules. And the dogs themselves are proof of those rules. They were shaped by them. They only exist because of them. The most dangerous thing in the wild is not a domestic dog that got loose. It is the silence in your own head when you imagine the door staying open and nothing being there to tell you what to do next. You're not the dog, but you might be closer to the question than you wanted to admit, because your brain, just like the German Shepherd waiting for a command in an empty meadow, was shaped for a world that gives it work to do. Remove the work, and the mind does not become wild, it becomes lost. That is why you ask the question. You looked at a video of a dog behind a fence and you wondered for just a second if the wild still wanted us back. It does not. It never did. The wild crowds are not a place. It is a filter, and everything that has passed through it has been changed by it, erased by it, or refined by it into something unrecognizable. Your ancestors built dogs to help them build the world you're sitting in right now. And the dogs you see today, the ones that make you pause your scroll, are monuments to that project. Not weapons, not mistakes, not monsters waiting for their moment. Just history, on 4 legs, staring through a fence at a world they never asked to enter. So the next time you see that caption, you will know what the science actually says. The wild does not want them, and in a strange, quiet way, it does not want you either. But you built a world that does. And that is not a small thing. It is the only thing that makes any of this possible.